Alrighty, so here we go. Match week number 8 in terms of the preview. And what's interesting about this match week is that there's going to be a Friday game that's going to be happening this match week. I believe this is the first time this season we have a Friday game. And since I'm doing this review on Friday, I want to do this relatively quick because that Friday game is going to kick off relatively soon. I think by the time I finish recording this video, it'll be like about an hour before the kickoff of the Vancouver versus Sporting KC game. But nevertheless, with that Friday game that's going to happen today, we also have free matinee games that's going to be happening on Saturday, and then majority of the action is going to be happening on Saturday night. I believe there is going to be 11 games that's going to be happening on Saturday. Or actually, I'm sorry, I take that back. No, it's not 11 games. That is actually not correct. It's actually 10 games that's going to be happening on Saturday night, and then of course we have the Sunday night soccer game, which we'll definitely talk about at the end, and this might be the best Sunday night soccer game that we have had in quite some while when you look at who is involved in that matchup. Now, let's begin by first talking about the Friday game that's going to start in just a bit, which is Vancouver versus Sporting KC. So, on paper, this looks like it's a one-sided affair. On paper, it looks like Vancouver should easily win this one. They have a 6-0-1 record, whereas Sporting KC have a 1-1-5 record. And as I said, this game will kick off in relatively soon. It's a bit of a late start in this one. I don't really like the fact that it's a late start, knowing that I have to work relatively early tomorrow morning, but it is what it is. And also, when it comes to the review, I'm probably going to do the review of this game and also the matinee game tomorrow because it's just way too late for me to do a review on a day where I have to work very early in the morning. So yeah, I'll probably save that. I'll probably even have a separate board as well because this is the only game that's going to be happening tonight. And in terms of the all-time meeting, 13, 6, and 12 in favor of Sporting KC. But yeah, on paper, this looks like a very lopsided resort. It seems like Vancouver should be heavy favorites coming into this one. I mean, they are currently tied at first place in the Western Conference against one of the worst team in the league, and I believe right now probably the worst team right now in the West, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, when you have a first versus last kind of matchup, usually you would think that the first place team should get the win, but that doesn't always seems like it's always the case. So we'll see how this, of course, what turns out. Now let's get to the Saturday matinee game, and obviously. Whenever there's a Saturday matinee game, it always kick off with Toronto versus Austin. This has been kind of a tradition doing this 9 game home stretch where they have played a lot of day games. I guess the reason why they play a lot of day games is not just because of the fact that the weather is still relatively cold in Toronto to play night game, but they want to play in these day games because I'm pretty sure at the nighttime they're gonna have to finish up the renovation to prepare for the World Cup. And for those of you that still kind of doesn't get the memo of why Toronto is playing a 9 game home stretch, well, it's because they're preparing for the World Cup, and that so far doing this 9 game home stretch, which I believe now they have officially passed the midway point of this. I mean, it's been a mixed bag. There's been some good resort. I mean, they've been unbeaten so far doing this nine game home stretch, but they definitely had 2 games that they would definitely love to have back, and especially trying to hope that they would have had 2 extra points instead of dropping them. And the last game is a great example against Cincinnati when they were up a man late in the game, weren't able to hold on to get the 1-0 win. And as it is kind of the case for TFC game this season, it just feels like you might as well just tune in the last 10 minutes of the game because that's where all the craziness happened in a TFC game, unless of course we talk about the Toronto game, which was absolutely bonkers from minute one. But yeah, in this one they face against Austin FC, a struggling Austin side that it seems like they're kind of revert back to last year. And what's worse about that is the fact that last year where they weren't able to make the playoffs despite the fact that they were really sputtering on the attack. Uh, this time it's kind of the same thing, but their defense have definitely not been as good as what we saw last season. So they have a 1-3-3 record. They're trying to correct that in this one. And in terms of the all-time meeting, 1-0-1 is the all-time meeting. So yeah, this should be very interesting to see. It's also going to be interesting to see, for Toronto. These last couple of games, you can kind of see that there's been times where they have struggled in terms of creating some chances, and a big part of that is Mihajlovic not being there. That Mihajlovic and Sargent combination, I thought we were gonna really finally get to see it in fall, and it's hard to believe to this day we still haven't really quite see it relatively happen. In fact, I don't think both of these players have been playing on the pitch at the same time so far. And if they did, it's probably not for much. And that's kind of been the thing that TFC fans been waiting for. But as I said, Mahajevic is going to be out for a couple more weeks. Actually, out pretty much for a couple of months too, because he's not going to be back before MLS does return from its World Cup break. Now, moving on, we got Montreal versus the New York Red Bulls. So the good news for Montreal is that they're facing against the only team that they were able to beat so far this season. Had they not beaten the Red Bulls, they would be a team that would be joining the Philadelphia Union as a team that has a winless run, and you could maybe even argue that they would be a team that would still be winless because they would be 0-7 right now. But they have a 1-0-6 record, and of course they have a new interim head coach. So maybe get some new interim head coach boost against a Red Bull side that definitely the kids are doing all right. I mean, yes, the kids have been kind of inconsistent, and that's as expected. I feel like this season for the Red Bulls, this is just going to be one of those years where the inconsistency is going to be there when you play all these kids there. But there are definitely talent all over the field. I think Michael Bradley has done a really good job in terms of promoting the youth movement and really showcase of that. But yeah, they're facing against a team that they lost last time, and it was not a great performance that they had against Montreal, and their record is 3-2-2, and that loss actually really kind of started the snowball for the Red Bulls because they started relatively well in the season, but after that loss against Montreal, they kind of had the wrong direction before they got that big win against Cincinnati to kind of get themselves back to where they are with a pretty good record. But yeah, this game starts at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. All-time meeting 16-5 and 14 in favor of the Red Bulls. So yeah, we'll see whether or not if the Red Bulls can bounce back and get some revenge after the early loss that they have against Montreal. I'm pretty sure they kind of underestimated Montreal in the first game, and it's easy to underestimate them again because Montreal right now it is an absolute mess right now with this team. I already mentioned it. Talk about the numerous coaching change and the head coach carousel of doom that it's going on between that organization. But yeah, this is kind of a game where the Red Bulls gonna have to take advantage, especially they failed to do so in the first time, and unfortunately, being the only team so far to lose Montreal so far this season. Now, moving on, we got Colorado versus Inter Miami, and boy, oh boy, I can't wait for this matchup, aren't we? Because honestly, the good thing about this matchup is that I really don't want to say it because I feel like I jinx it every single time when I say this, the fact that there's going to be a high scoring affair, but it just kind of feels like that's been the case for a Rapids home game this season. Like every Rapids home game has been featuring tons of goals, and you got to give a lot of credit to Matt Wells in terms of the reckless abandon kind of style that they play. And while at times that could cost them, especially on the defensive end, it also kind of provides a very good attacking prowess. And that, yeah, you got to say this is probably the most entertaining team to watch so far, at least in these last couple of weeks. Now they're facing against an Inter Miami team that it's hard to believe we're saying this, but this is the first time that they're going to be under an interim head coach themselves as well after Javier Mascherano make that shock exit last week against the New York Red Bulls. So Guillermo Hoyos is the one that takes charge of this team. They have a 3-3-1 record, and again, anytime when you have a new interim head coach, and especially from what it heard the report saying that Javier Mascherano, even though he did say that he stepped down, I think we have maybe more evidence to point out that he was pretty much being forced out rather than actually resign. I mean, them saying resigning is kind of just the uh 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 sugarcoat way of saying that yeah we didn't want him, and that he has definitely caused some locker room turmoil, as we have heard reports that there has been some conflict in the Inter Miami locker room where the players are not happy in terms of how Mascherano is, especially Lionel Messi hasn't really been happy with his head coach. And Lionel Messi, when it comes to MLS, it's kind of like LeBron James when it comes to the NBA and the Lakers. He's gonna always have to call the shots in terms of how things have gone, and you kind of almost have to oblige that because he is your superstar player. He is the face of this league. So yeah, I think because of the way that Messi was very unhappy with Marciano, they might have some disagreement. Maybe this is also kind of the reason why it led to Marciano to pretty much being forced out. But nevertheless, with a new interim head coach, maybe this might kickstart their season back because it's been a very pedestrian start to the season for this Inter Miami team. Yes, I know they've only lost one games, and I know they're pretty high up in the standings. But when you look at how they've been playing, it has been very pedestrian, especially on the defensive end, and it's not going to get any easier because they're facing against literally an absolute juggernaut this start of the season. That is the Rapids. They're just scoring goals for fun, especially when they're playing at home. Now, technically, this game isn't actually at their home stadium. It's actually going to be at Empower Field, where the Broncos of course play, and it's actually going to be at their old home as well because they used to play at that stadium before playing at Commerce City and playing at at DSG Stadium. But at the same time, I also kind of find it interesting that they kind of always paint this as the fact that this is like the 30th anniversary kind of match, even though I think it is pretty clear that yeah, this the reason why they decided to move back to their old stadium is not because of the fact that they're celebrating their 30th anniversary. It's because of the fact that they're playing Inter Miami, and yeah, expect it should be a big crowd in terms of this. Wouldn't be surprised we might get 70,000 plus, even bigger crowd than what we saw in the NWSL game. It is pretty clear that Denver is definitely a city that can support soccer, and this just kind of makes you wonder if the Rapids can do a better job when it comes to marketing themselves. I mentioned before the struggle they have, the attendance, and also the way that they haven't really done a great job marketing themselves in the Denver area. But if you can market it perfectly, and this might be a great opportunity to do so, there could be a chance where this not only is a great opportunity for the Rapids to showcase what they can do against the bad and evil known as Inter Miami, but it's a great opportunity to showcase the casual. There's going to be a lot of casual that's going to be at this game. Some of them maybe there just to see it play, but if you show off, I mean, if you put on a show, especially of how they've been playing, those casual can definitely realize that hey, maybe this might be a team that I might be interested in. I mean, it is my local team. They are based in my area. Maybe I might be going to another Colorado Rapids game in the future. So, this game, not only the fact that it's big for the Rapids in terms of getting the win in front of their big crowd, but it's a chance to kind of convert versus some of these casual fans in terms of so rooting for the Rapids, and maybe could be used to help boost the attendance that has been definitely been a problem for this team over the years. Now, moving on, we get to the 7:30 p.m. Eastern start. There's six of them, so yeah, it's one of those weeks where there's a lot of games that's going to be happening in this window. This window always is kind of what I say is the meat of the action, and that kind of is the case again. But we start off with the Philadelphia Union versus DC United. So for the second week in a row, the Union kind of are giving a gift basket when it comes to getting themselves back on track because one week they face against a lowly Montreal side, and now they face against a DC side that yes, I know they did lose them on opening weekend, but this is still a team that they have fairly dominated in the recent meeting. 1-0-6 is the record for the Union. They finally got their first win and finally become the last team to register a win this season in MLS. Whereas they face against a DC team that not only is heading to a wrong direction, but coming off that embarrassing PK shootout loss against one Knoxville SC in the U.S. Open Cup. That is a very brutal kind of kind of resort to trying to come back from. And like I said, this is probably the last team you want to face because yes, I know they kind of slay their demon at least in the first game. I'm not quite sure they can do it again in this one. I think the Union want to get some revenge and show why they are the daddy of DC in recent memories. But yeah, all-time meeting 22 8 and 11 is the all-time meeting, and with the way that the Union finally get that monkey off the back, sometimes when you're a team and when you're on a losing skid like the Union was to begin the season, I think that kind of started to take a toll on this team. You can definitely see that players are pressing too much and being too desperate and not playing at their best because of this losing streak being weighed down. Now that it finally come off their shoulder, and now you're facing against a team that you have good success against in the past. Maybe the Union can start to have a bit of a comeback after a bit of a slow start to the season. I mean, I know it is a long way to come back from starting the season with six straight losses, but we've seen before where teams are able to overcome a devastating start to the season and still able to make the playoffs. And we'll see whether or not the Union can string some resort together to get themselves back at least close to that conversation. Now, moving on, we got Orlando versus the Houston Dynamo. So this is another matchup featuring two teams that haven't really done relatively well. You could say maybe this is a desperation derby because yeah, for Orlando, the good news for them is that they finally got a point and stopped the bleeding when it comes to their defense. I mean, their defense was an absolute mess in the last couple of games. They finally stopped that bleeding by only conceding one goal in the last game, but most importantly, getting a draw, which is feels like a win for Orlando City. Consider how things have gone in the last couple of weeks, and they have a chance to maybe get another one in this game against a Houston Dynamo team that, just like DC, they're heading the wrong direction. After a good start to the season, the Dynamo have just really struggled in the last couple of games. But all-time meeting 2-3-2 is the all-time meeting. So yeah, in a desperation derby like this between both of these teams desperate to get a win, let's see who, of course, will do so. Now, moving on, we got NYCFC versus Charlotte FC. So, from the Desperation Derby to maybe the Fraud Derby. I mean, I don't know. You could maybe say that this is a game between two teams that maybe are very fraudulent. I mean, for NYCFC, to be fair, they are still a decent team, though. I don't know if they are considered to be a team that maybe in the top echelon in terms of MLS right now. I mean, they got off to a good start, at least in the middle part there. They have kind of slowed down a little bit with a 3-2-2 record, whereas they face against a Charlotte team that, like I said many times before, they are the clear pretenders of MLS. Have said this before with Charlotte, and I know Charlotte fans might not be happy that I said this. Some might even put in the comment section that I'm being too harsh on the Charlotte team. But you look at some of the resort that they've been playing so far this season and some of the easy opponent that they have faced, and the fact that they have a couple of games where they're able to capitalize by being a man up, then you can now start to see why when they don't have those kind of advantage and when they do face against a tougher team like they did in last week against Nashville, against a much weaker Nashville side as well, and the fact that they don't get a result in that game, again, that just kind of shows you that this team may be more of a pretender than rather than a contender, and there is a lot of fraudulent that is being pointed to the Charlotte team. But all-time meeting 5-2-4 in favor of Charlotte FC. So yeah, and kind of a bit of a fraudulent derby, you could say, between both of these teams. Let's see who can, of course, get that big win to at least kind of show that they're not really that fraudulent as we thought that they are to begin the season. Now, moving on, we got New England versus the Columbus Crew. So remember how New England got off to that terrible start to the season? Things have definitely gone much better for this New England team. A big part of it is, them playing at home. They've been able to take advantage of course, getting those home wins, and especially playing against some relatively easy opponent. Now, they have a chance to do it again against this Columbus Crew team that is still struggling mightily under Henrik Rustrom with a 1-3 and free record, and not to mention the fact that it just kind of feels like it's a lost season for the Columbus Crew. I mean, after last week with the announcement of Wissam Abu Ali torn his ACL, done for the season, and him being really the only attacking player that can score the goals for this team, I mean, I just feel like this is kind of a lost season for this team unless they make some big changes in the summer transfer window, and maybe them just kind of limp their way into the summer transfer window to get some reinforcement. But they have a 1-3 and free record, whereas New England have a 3-0 and free record. All-time meeting 17-9-11 in favor of Columbus, but this is definitely a game that New England can definitely get the win. And again, I know some people might say that New England is taking advantage of playing against easy team, especially at home, but that's what you need to do. Like, with how poor of a start to the season it is, and there was even some whispers saying that is Marko Mitrovic maybe the right man for this job. I think he is. I think he is starting to slowly turn things around. This is what happened when you of course have a new head coach coming in, where we always talk about how they get a new head coach boost. It doesn't always work out like that. Sometimes it might take a while for the tactics and also the philosophy to be implemented in this team, and at least in these last couple of games at home, they have been able to successfully do that and get those win. And because of that, they have now climbed themselves up in above the red line right now, because there are some really bad teams right now in the Eastern Conference. As we always say the last couple of years, where the East has been the haves or the have-nots. The have-nots has just clearly been by far some of the worst team we've seen, are nowhere near in terms of contender for the playoffs, and New England is definitely a team that's kind of proven that they are the half so far. They are a team that can get into the conversation, especially with some of these teams that I thought that they were going to be running for contention in the East, are starting to kind of fell out. Looking at those two Ohio team, that is as a big reason of it. Now, moving on, we got Atlanta versus Nashville SC. So again, another game where it feels like on paper it's an absolute mismatch. Nashville have a 5-1-1 record, whereas Atlanta have a 1-1-5 record. All-time meeting 5-5-4 in favor of Nashville SC. But I would also say that this might be a trap game for Nashville, because I know that on paper this should be a game that they should get a win, especially against an Atlanta team that have just kind of fall off the map in the last couple of weeks. But knowing the fact that they just gone to the Azteca in the middle of the week and getting that big victory like that, there's always ways that sense the fact that when you have such a big victory like that, it's just such a historic victory that Nashville SC has had. Gonna definitely go down as one of the biggest victory that this franchise have ever had. When you come back to league play and you're facing against a lowly opponent, there is definitely that letdown period. Especially we'll see whether if maybe BJ Callahan might be just thinking about even and thinking about rotating the team in this one. I mean, it worked pretty well in terms of him rotating the team and just kind of showcase why Nashville has some really good depth pieces. But again, I just go back to the fact that after that big win that they had against Club America, which I think this team definitely want to celebrate because they did something that no MLS team has ever done going down to the Azteca. But still, I just think that it could be a bit of a massive letdown and that they got to be careful not to fall into the trap of this Atlanta team that, Atlanta, as bad as this season has gone, there are some games where they have shown the effort. I think the last game was a great example of it. I really think the last game, even though they lost that one, that was probably one of the better games that Atlanta United have played, especially on the attacking end. They just couldn't finish in the last game. Now, moving on, we got Cincinnati versus the Chicago Fire. So this matchup, in the beginning of the season, I thought this was probably going to be one of the top matchup because both of these teams look like could be two teams that may be gunning for the Eastern Conference supremacy. And while one team has been able to do so, the other it has been disappointing. Cincinnati 2-1-4 is the record. I mean, they got a draw against Toronto despite down the 10 men and fought hard to get that hard-earned point, but they still just does not look like a team that is doing well. And this is even with Evander being into this team. I mean, he just have not looked the same ever since he suffered the injury. And we also talk about how the defense has been a major problem, and now it seems like they're starting to suffer some injuries on the back line as well, because that's just how it is for Cincinnati. They can't spend a season or at least a couple of months without some devastating injury that decimate their back line. And it doesn't help the fact that they're facing against the Chicago team that have a 4-1-2 record, and this Fire team is kind of live up to its name right now. I mean, they are just red hot right now. What's kind of interesting of their red hot streak isn't because of the fact that they're scoring a lot of goals. This has been a very kind of stingy Chicago team in the last couple of games. They haven't done a great job in terms of the defending. A big part of it is their new signing Bukazi. He has fixed a lot of issue that this team has had last season of the team that wasn't defending well at all. And also Chris Brady kind of maybe making his case that he wanted to be included as the third choice goalkeeper and maybe even make his conversation to Mauricio Pochettino that maybe he may even be gunning for the starting spot as well. I mean, that might be a little far fetched, but still, he's done very well in these last couple of games for the Chicago Fire, and I wouldn't be surprised he might be that third choice goalkeeper behind Matt Turner and Matt Freese for the U.S. men's national team heading into the World Cup. But in terms of the all-time meetings, 7-4-4 in favor of FC Cincinnati. So yeah, let's see how this game, of course, turns out. Chicago, with all the momentum that they've been having, they're definitely going to be the favorites coming into this one. And it's not very often say that when Cincinnati is playing at home, which for the most part they've been pretty good the last couple of seasons, that they are maybe the slight underdog. I mean, again, this is a very uncharted territory that Cincinnati has got under Pat Nolan. This is by far the poorest start that they have under the Pat Nolan era, and it will be very interesting to see whether or not if they can dig themselves out of it. Because on paper, the talent should be there to get themselves being a much better team. It just feels like it's been a very disappointing and underachieving season so far for this FC Cincinnati squad. Now, moving on, in terms of talk about the 8:30 p.m. Eastern and the late West Coast game that is, what's kind of interesting is the last West Coast game actually ends at 9:30. Well, it doesn't end at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, but it ends at 11:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Pacific. So a little earlier ending to the Saturday action as usual. That's great because that means that I maybe get like a little extra hours of sleep and doesn't have to stay as much later as I usually do for the Saturday action. But we start off with Minnesota versus the Portland Timbers. This is the first of two games that start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Minnesota have a 3-2-2 record, whereas the Timbers have a 2-1-4 record. All-time meeting 10-4-5 in favor of Minnesota, and it feels like it's been a while since Minnesota has been at home. Like they have been on the road a lot, especially with this California trip that they've been going through, and that's going to continue because they're going to go back to California at the end of this month, facing against the San Jose Earthquakes in the U.S. Open Cup. But despite that, with them playing on the road a lot, they're once again showcasing the fact that this team is the true road warriors of MLS. I mean, I don't know what is it with this team when it comes to playing on the road and them looking so good, but this team always tends to do much better when they're on the road than they are at Allianz Field. And maybe this might be the same case in this game against the Timber side. That yes, they got a big victory in the last game. They got a win that they absolutely needed against LAFC. If they couldn't get a result in that one against an LAFC team that was pretty much putting reserve side, Phil Neville probably would have been facing the chopping block. But instead, he is still surviving for another week, and yeah, now facing against a Minnesota team that I would say might be a little bit of a tired Minnesota team because yes, as great as that victory was against Sacramento to move on, and as ugly as that game was to survive in that 12 round PK shootout, because of the way that they have a short week and they are the team that unfortunately have to travel the most out of any of these teams that play in the midweek U.S. Open Cup road game, it could come at a cost with this one. Fatigueness, I think, could start to catch up to this Minnesota team. They have played a lot of games in the last couple of weeks, but still, even with that, I do think that they need to win this game. I mean, this is really one of those rare times where Minnesota is actually not playing against a tough team. It feels like every single week Minnesota plays against a good team, and that kind of continue next week when they in the next couple of games when they play Dallas on the row and also playing against LAFC as well. So this is a game that they have to take advantage to maybe put the pressure off them when they do face against those good opponent in the near future. Now, speaking of Dallas, they're playing against the LA Galaxy, who have a 2-2-3 record, whereas Dallas have a 3-3-1 record. An all-time meeting, 19-4 and 13 in favor of Dallas. And Dallas, as much as I've said that this team has kind of really flying under the radar this season and has been sneakily good, there's just something about Dallas that just it sort of doesn't feel right with this team when it comes to the fact that it just kind of feel like maybe whenever they get into the spotlight, maybe we started to give them too much credit. Then that's when they kind of start to struggle a bit. They like to stay under the radar. Doesn't want to know their biggest secret in terms of them playing relatively well. And now they're facing against a Galaxy side that, yes, I know they got absolutely destroyed by Toluca. That was kind of expected because you're facing literally probably the best team right now, the most informed team right now in the Concacaf region. So yeah, that was kind of expected, but they have definitely played a little bit better at least in league play, and we'll see whether or not if they can do so in this game. It's gonna be tough because this is a Dallas team that, like I said, the record is a little bit deceiving. I think they're definitely better than what their record is. They definitely play in most of these games that look like they have been the better side, but there's just something about this that doesn't seem right. It just feels like this team, could maybe do a little bit better than what their record basically say, especially with the play. There's been times where they have looked like a very fun team to watch, but the problem is that they're unable to get the result because the defense sometimes let them down, or in case of the last game where the defense for once actually did its job, but the attack just kind of was sleepwalking for most of the game. Now, moving on, we got Seattle versus St. Louis City. So Seattle, obviously, after such a gut punching loss that they had against Tigres in the second leg, I know they did win that game 3-1, but it's technically a loss because they lose in the aggregate score on the away goal. Now it's going to be interesting to see how they respond because they're facing against a St. Louis side that is a definition of a team that you should not be looking at their record and think that this is going to be an easy cakewalk. This St. Louis team has shown a lot of good effort this season and have really caught a lot of team by surprise the fact that they are a really stingy defensive team. Now, obviously, the reason why their record isn't very good is because they don't really have a lot of attacking power, and because of that, that's kind of the reason why they're still not doing relatively well. But it is a team that is hard to get points. So we'll see how Seattle will do in this one. This, of course, is the first of the two 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific start. Seattle 4-1-1, whereas St. Louis is 1-3-3. Seattle has kind of dominated this meeting. 6-0-1 is their record. So the Sounders will definitely be confident in the fact that since they have a relatively good record against St. Louis, they should do well. But like I said, I gotta give Ron Dame and the St. Louis team a lot of credit. The fact that yes, their record doesn't look very good, but they're showing a lot of effort. They're making teams to really work hard to get those points, and that's all you can ask if you're a St. Louis fan. They're still in the midst of this rebuild right now, especially with the new GM to kind of limp their way into the summer transfer window to look for those attacking reinforcement. And so far, they've done a pretty good job doing so. Now, moving on to the last game, which is RSL versus San Diego, and I think this is definitely one of those other games where it's definitely going to be must-watch TV because last time when RSL played against San Diego, it was definitely a very entertaining game, and especially with the way that RSL has become one of the most informed teams so far this season, a very surprising informed team. Lim and the San Jose Earthquakes are probably the most surprising informed team that really kind of caught me by surprise of how good they are, and especially with RSL, it's the youth movement. I mean, I talk about the Red Bulls doing pretty well in terms of the youth movement. RSL basically just laugh and say, yeah, you haven't seen what we've been doing with our youth movement. Our youth movement is just absolutely crazy right now. And as a result, they are 4-1-1 facing against the San Diego side that, yeah, let's just say that this is really the first time we have ever seen in this franchise history where they are definitely going for a bit of a dark period. I mean, they have been winless in the last 5 games. I think the number one goal for San Diego coming out of this, don't get a red card. Like this has been a problem for San Diego. 4 straight games with a red card. Surely it can't be 5 straight games with a red card. Is it? Surely they can't have another player get sent off. I mean, the good news is at least Chris McVeigh is not going to be playing in this one because he's already suspended from the last game. But again, this team has to do a better job when it comes to staying disciplined. You're not gonna win a lot of games if you just go down to the 10 men every single game like San Diego has. So we'll see whether or not if they can do so in this one. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 1-1-1 is the all-time meeting, and like I said, should be a very interesting game. It was a very exciting game last time when both of these teams face off against each other, and I expect this might be the same case in this one as well. And then last but not least, we talk about the Sunday night soccer game and the game that I mentioned before this has been a game that I've been kind of hyped up since last week as well, because last week was just an absolute stinker when it comes to the Sunday night soccer game. This is completely opposite. This is probably one of the best Sunday night soccer game when it comes to both teams being really in form, facing off against each other. And that, of course, is LAFC versus the San Jose Earthquakes. LAFC, of course, 5-1-1, whereas the San Jose Earthquakes 6-0-1. They're tied with Vancouver right now in first place. And so far, the Quakes, they have answered every question and test that's been thrown their way. I mean, every single game that they play, even in the loss against Seattle, they have looked like the better team against their opposition. And now I think this is the ultimate test. I mean, it's one thing, it's great that the Quakes have looked good against all these teams, but now they're facing against probably the toughest task. I think out of all the teams that they're facing, this is probably the toughest thing that they have to do, especially on the road. And honestly, I feel like if you're the Quakes, even if you don't win this game, I mean, I'm not gonna say that that the Quakes really need to win this game because I'm just completely blown away of how good this team has, and I've been blown away what Bruce Arena has done to really cook this team to become a legitimate contender that I definitely not in a million years thought that was going to be the case, at least judging by the status of the squad in the beginning of the season. But yeah, this should be a good test to see. Really, maybe could be a game where imagine if they beat LAFC in this one against a team that yes, they did lose their last game, but remember it was a reserve side. They're probably gonna have their starters in this one, even though they play in the middle of the week down in Mexico, which maybe that kind of gives a little advantage to the Quakes. Yes, I know the Quakes play midweek as well, but they didn't put most of their starter in the U.S. Open Cup game against Phoenix Rising, so they're definitely going to be the more fresher side. But still, they can get a win in this one. What a big message is that just sends to the rest of the Western Conference. And I mean, knowing that Bruce Arena has done this before, we saw this when he was with New England, when a lot of people were asking, is New England really for real? Is Bruce really cooking a gourmet meal in terms of being a team that looks unstoppable? Yeah, most of the time when they have those big games, the answer is yes. So yeah, this is again this should be a very exciting kind of matchup. I'm very excited to see how it is, and it's also kind of one of those matchup where if the Quakes do lose this one, I'm not gonna be that disappointed because you kind of expect it when you face against an LAFC team that's just so informed the this season. But yeah, I'm very excited to see what this team made for. And if they do get the win in this one, not only the fact that I will go absolutely ecstatic, but I'm just starting to think that yeah, something is special going on for this team. This is really the first time in a very long time, maybe even before, when I know there was at one point where when the Quakes were second in the standings late in the season under Almeida, and how I was excited, and then things kind of fall apart late in the season. Just don't think this is going to be the case this season. I just feel like whatever Bruce Arena is building is going to be sustainable, barring of course injuries that is, and also whether or not if they can spend more money to upgrade the team, because I do think that there are definitely some needs that they need to upgrade to booster the depth. But if they can do that, we could be talking about a cup contender. I would have never thought I would be saying cup contender and San Jose Earthquakes in the same sentence. That feels crazy to say, but this is the reality. If they can win this game and continue this good run of form, I think we can safely say that this team can legitimately should be serious, and this team can be like what we saw with Vancouver last season. Nobody really gave Vancouver a chance last season, and then out of nowhere they become a wagon, and next thing you know, they went all the way to MLS Cup last year as well. Not saying that that might be the case with the Quakes as well, but wouldn't be surprised if that might be the case. We might see a Vancouver Whitecaps 2.0, just like what we saw last season to this season with the Quakes as well. But there you have it. That is pretty much it when it comes to the review of all of these games. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these games. And as always, let me know in the comments below your prediction for all 15 of these games. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.